Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a game review, something we haven't done in a while, which to be fair, outside of the video I posted a couple of days ago, really isn't anything, but it's been a while since we've done a game review too. And today, as you can see from the title and the B-roll playing, we're going to be taking a look at Mouse PI for Hire. Mouse PI for Hire is a relatively new game here that just came out. Essentially, it puts you in the shoes of a mouse that is a private investigator in a city and in a world where civilization is based around mice, obviously. And you do what PIs do. Essentially, you go from place to place, track down leads, investigate different crimes and disappearances, and look into some fishy or some corrupt people or some big time criminals. And in this, you're going from place to place, roughing up and killing a bunch of, criminal mice and disrupting operations and kind of tracking down a series of leads and going along this little plot line or storyline and uncovering this huge like criminal enterprise and conspiracy and all these kind of trying to take down all these criminal operations. As you can see here, putting together your little detective bulletin board, which to be fair, you don't really do um, a ton of detective work on your own in this game, but that is obviously a heavy emphasis on the game as a whole and what you're doing in the story and everything. This game, that being said, is kind of like a mixture between LA Noir and Doom in a little bit of in some ways. Obviously, the connections to LA Noir, if you're familiar with that game, which most people are, it's one of the, I'd say one of the better Rockstar games. And Rockstar doesn't really have any bad games necessarily, but it's a very iconic game. Obviously, there's a lot reminiscent here. The black and white kind of color and graphic style of this game is very clearly intended to kind of go in tune with that game. The fact that you are a PI, not a detective in this game, but a PI, and chasing down a bunch of leads, have your little detective board, and are solving crimes and going from place to place, fighting criminals. This game has heavy influence from LNOR and is in many ways similar to that, but it's not necessarily a detective-based game. The primary game of the primary method of this game is not to put you into the shoes of a detective to help you go solve a bunch of crimes, and that's the primary focus of the game. That is the kind of framework of this game. And as you go from mission to mission and place to place here, as you can see in some of this early footage of the game, you go on to different spots of the map. You get fed, depending on which mission you're on, you get fed some kind of lead and some sort of backstory as to what's going on here, what you're looking for, and what you're doing. And you go in, and it's more of a kind of like a boomer shooter than it is like an LA Noir where you're investigating, you're finding clues, you're running after criminals and trying to arrest them or whatever, interrogating people. You don't do a ton of detective work on your own. You essentially go to these places in that framework, but then once you get into it, and you'll see a bit later into this B-roll, you're mostly just fighting criminals. And if you're me, you're doing it poorly because the controls of this game, I was still kind of getting down at this point. But you're mostly just going from level to level, room to room, and like phase to phase, kind of fighting these criminals, almost like you're fighting waves of enemies when you play Doom or Quake or something like that. So it's a mixture between the two kind of genres and types of games, and I think it does a really good job of doing that in Mouse PI. I'm not going to get into heavy spoilers or anything as far as the whole plot line or any late game spoilers here, intentionally so, obviously, because I don't want to spoil this game for people who are playing through it or going to play through it soon. But it's a lot of people have been making some jabs at this game and the story not being amazing. Personally, I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was a really interesting kind of framework to go through this game with. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting to kind of live out and kind of follow along with. Some people have really politicized it for whatever reason, which I found strange for like goofy cartoon 1920s animated game. Some people are talking about like big mice and little mice and stuff and like drawing political kind of comparisons between the games and the real world and stuff, which I think is personally idiotic, but nonetheless, that is something to be there. I don't think that's a huge factor here. Overall, I think the story of the game and the detective framework is really interesting. It's a really fun way to kind of interact with this type of game and play it. And I think that Mouse PI does a really good job with it, and you'll see what I mean if you play the game. On top of that, Obviously, the 1920s, 1930s style of game, not just in the color and the graphics, but just in general. Um, I love it. I think this is a really fun type of, animation and cartoon and way to present the game. I thought it was really cool when Noir did it. This black and white, gritty, like kind of vibe really lends itself very well to, you know, detective style games and really detective style stuff in general. I think it's a great kind of overcast to the game as a whole, and I think this game does a great job doing that personally. On top of that, you might see for some of this B-roll, if I remember correctly, the game just plays into this style of animation and gameplay really well. Like, I don't know if it's going to be a particular B-roll of me punching somebody in this video, but when you punch somebody, you do these big wind-up animations and like let them have it with with something that looks like it's out of like Steamboat Willie or something. You have a bunch of, really good like hand-drawn and really old and good-looking kind of 1920s style artwork in this. It fits the genre incredibly well, especially since they're mice. I'm not sure they're going off the Mickey Mouse thing. I'm sure Disney wouldn't care for that too much, but they do a great job with it. The game looks spectacular. This is running on all this gameplay is being captured off an Xbox Series X, by the way. Um, but it looks fantastic. It plays fantastic, and it runs very smoothly. Overall, the look and the whole vibe of this game, with the weapons, with the animation style, everything about this game, in that kind of visual and presentation style, in that category, I think they really nailed it here. I think this is a really fun and goofy, and fits really well type of animation and way to present the game. And I personally, I find, unlike some of the IGN reviewers in this, I find the mice kind of world that this is set in kind of charming and goofy and fun. Personally, I think it's kind of funny. I think they do a good job of making it not too serious because of that and really playing up the mice dynamic. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of controversy about the IGN review of this game because they gave it such a low score, mainly because the IGN reviewer, one of the big things he didn't like was that it was constantly making like mouse references, especially with like cheese, which is kind of an interesting point to make when you're playing in a game in a world filled with mice. But regardless, I think they do it really well. I think it's a really interesting, funny world to be in, especially in a game that has the like serious tone of a detective style game. I think it's really interesting. Um, but I personally really like this entire kind of theme and style. On top of that, I think the combat, even though obviously you can see here, I'm still getting my grips on stuff, and this is early game footage. The combat style is really fun. You get some more, cool weapons and stuff you can do, and how you can fight in this game later on in the into the game, other than just like a pistol or a base shotgun and stuff, which keeps the weapon style and the fighting fresh. I think it makes it an exciting game to play, and I think the combat's really well done. It really gives the feel of like an old school Doom that has just been, brought into the like almost like remastered. Doom does a lot differently, obviously. They're just the same type of like boomer shooter thing, but this does a very good job of going level to level, facing different enemies, scaling those enemies up, giving you new weapons and like stuff to use against those weapons, and new ways to interact with the map. Like you get the shotgun in this clip, you get the dynamite that can blow up, different walls and fake, kind of hidden passages. You see the explosive barrels that you can use that are, purposely, and ice barrels, which you'll see later in this clip as well, that you can use to freeze or explode your enemies. And there's just different ways to interact with the combat. So it keeps evolving over the course of the game. It never really gets super dull, or you feel like, oh my god, I'm just killing the same little tiny mouse guy with a bat or with the the Thompson type gun over and over and over again that I got at the essentially the tutorial for this game. It really does a good job of progressing and keeping things fresh, which in this style of game, when it's not going to be heavy on the detective work, as that type of game like an L.A. Noir, and mixes it with like a Doom boomer shooter type game, is very important for the kind of long-term viability of this game. Of I don't get bored of this game after 2 hours and want to put it down and never pick it up again. And I think it does a good job of that, combined with the fact that the story obviously progresses along with it, and it does do a good job of keeping you interested in the story and wanting to know more about this criminal enterprises and these disappearances, um, and these in like the politics of this world and stuff. It does a good job of getting you involved in the world. That's another thing for a game that is a boomer shooter and kind of half focused on that, half focused on being a detective game. It does a tremendous job of making the world feel alive. You might not see in this video, in this particular B-roll or anything, a ton of examples of that, since I'm going to be mostly going through a level in most of this clip, but it does a great job of making the world as a whole feel alive in Mouse PI. When you go to like the base area that you get to in the tutorial, after the tutorial, you'll see this very quickly. The world has shops you can go into. There's stuff you can buy that is helpful for combat and like these missions, but also something I was thinking about including in this, but I didn't because I wanted more action B-roll. There's an entire like card game in this, kind of similar to how like The Witcher has Gwent as like a secondary kind of thing inside of their game, like a card game, like another game inside of a game. This has like a kind of like a baseball card game, where essentially you try to either be the pitcher or the hitter in like a base in like this kind of baseball card game, and try to use your pitchers or your hitters that get dealt to you like in a shuffled hand, along with like ability increases that help them either have more hitting power or be able to like have more stamina and be able to run more bases and stuff like that, to combine to get like a deck of really good cards and essentially play and get 3 outs or get as many runs as you can in 2 innings. Um, it's like a 2 inning baseball game, card game, essentially, is the best way to kind of boil it down. But that's I love that. I love that they took the time to do that. They had absolutely no obligation to do that in this type of game. That's not at all focused on that or world building or making the world feel lived or real at all. They did a lot of work to put in to actually make this game's world feel kind of interesting and lived in. There's shop owners, there's people you can interact with, there's people you can talk to on the streets. There's the card game, obviously, which I also just love. I mean, I love when they did it. I love when Witcher did it. As you know from this channel, if you followed some of my initial Twitch streams a while ago when I was still doing that a little bit, I played quite extensively outside of The Witcher. I love when the games add those little like extra layers, or like when you can play poker and blackjack and stuff in like GTA or Red Dead. I love when video games do that, personally speaking. Um, so yeah, that's another little great thing that Mouse PI has done with this world and with the addition of that. It makes the game and the world feel so much better, and you can tell a lot of effort went into this game and the world as a whole, and they didn't just kind of phone it in and try to we have a good unique concept that hasn't done in a while. We'll just put it all into the combat or put it all into these levels and scaling enemies and stuff. We're gonna make a complete game here, and we're gonna put a lot of detail and a lot of effort into every aspect of this, which I really appreciate. And it gives them a lot of points and credit in my book. On top of that, yeah, the combat holds up, the story holds up. Overall, Mouse PI is a fantastic game. It's a unique kind of world and setting and story. It's a lot of fun to play through. It's an amazing time. One of the better games that I've played in a while, to be honest. One of the better new games that I've played in a while, and it's refreshing. As I kind of mentioned in my last video about 2026 being a good year for gaming, this is one of the better games that's come out this year so far. Obviously, there's a lot of big releases coming for this year. It's really stacking up to be a really fantastic year for gaming. And this is as well as a few other games that have released kind of early this year have kind of led the way for that. And this again, this is not a triple A game. This is not a quadruple A game even, like you see from Ubisoft or something. Um, this is an indie game. This is not a huge, massive budget, billions of dollars being spent game. This isn't a $70 game. This isn't an $80 game or even a $60 game. I believe I paid $30 for this, full price, that is. I personally bought it on Xbox. I'd recommend probably buying it on PC or having a mouse and keyboard to play it. Having played this on controller, not exactly my favorite medium and controls to play it with. I don't know. I just find the controls, especially with the sticks and aiming and everything, not to be as intuitive as a mouse and keyboard, but that's just me. in my habits I built up over years of playing both console and PC. But either way, it still runs great on both, and it looks great on both. But yeah, this overall fantastic game. Really good combat and action for the levels in here, for the boomer shooter aspect. Interesting story and detective elements and animation and graphical style for the detective or LA Noir kind of love letter side of this game. They nail that as well. Nail the world and the details of this game as well. Really interesting kind of setting and place to be put into here. It is absolutely fantastic. Um, one of the better games I've played recently. I highly recommend this game. Whether you're picking it up on console or PC, I think it's definitely worth every penny that you spend on it. And thankfully, since it's not a quadruple or triple A game, it's not quite as many pennies. Either way, whether it's on sale or whether it's full price, this is definitely a great game to look into. Great game to start off the earlier-ish half of 2026 with here, if you're looking for a new game to play. And highly recommend this. If I was going to give it a score out of 10, probably not going to give it a 6 out of 10 like IGN. I'd give this right around like an 8.5, 8.7. This is a truly great game. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's a generational type of game that will give it a 10 or like a high nines, just somewhere in the nines. But it is about as good of a base simple game as you can get without getting to that, without getting to that level. I mean, so I highly recommend it. Highly rate it. It is worth the buy. I don't really know what type of rating scale I generally do. I just kind of say whether I like it or whether I don't like it. As for complaints, just leaving off on this video, I was trying to kind of think of that throughout this video and when I was trying to hype it up and give it a review. Honestly, outside of the kind of annoying controls when it comes to Xbox and stuff that I was kind of tweaking around with and earlier in this game, I don't really have a lot of complaints that come to head or come to mind. Where I have enjoyed a more intuitive and really super deep, fleshed out, amazing story, sure, but that also isn't necessarily the main focus of this game, and I can understand why that maybe isn't present. On top of that, could there be more detective aspects of this that I do myself and actually feel more like a PI or detective in this game? Sure. You had the detective board and everything, and the guns and the leads and interviewing people, but it really isn't like Noir. You don't connect the dots on your board yourself. You don't necessarily track down the leads and chase the criminals or interview them in, a detective like interrogation room or anything like that. I think that's maybe a little aspect that's a little lacking in this game. That's why I don't think it gets a 9 or higher to really get that generational or masterpiece or fantastic out of this world game. It's more in like the mid eights. But that being said, again, that's not necessarily 100% what this game is aiming to do, and I can understand why that doesn't go to that like quadruple A budget level of in-depth analysis on all of the aspects of this game, um, and I completely accept that. So those would be my main kind of minor complaints with this game, but overall, again, very good game. Highly recommend. I've had a lot of fun with this, over the time that I've had it, and I continue to enjoy quite a bit. But yeah, that's about it for the review. Glad to be kind of back on YouTube on a somewhat consistent basis and doing game reviews in general, obviously, here as I fail at this trampoline here. My God, I forgot how embarrassing this was. But yeah, definitely going to be keeping more videos coming, more reviews coming. Next review might be Windrose. I know it's still in early access. I know a lot of people have already put out their first impressions, but the game so far looks amazing, and it's been a lot of fun. So probably going to be the next review I do, maybe, as well as some other videos coming out. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to be alerted to those and keep in the loop. And yeah, subscribing and likes always, go a long way and are very much appreciated if you like the channel, like the video. Let me know what you think of Mouse PI for Hire and what your thoughts are on the game and my review. And I'd love to hear that. And I'll see you all in the next video.